All right, everyone, it is 2:05 p.m. We're getting ready to start the webinar here. This is Alex with Wolfe Incorporated. Thank you all for joining us today on this beautiful Tuesday. We have Tommy Eden here and Charlton Owensby. We're going to be talking about the highly controversial topic of CBD oil and what is going on in the workplace. First off, we'll start with Mr. Tommy Eden. Tommy, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your credentials?
Yes, my name is Tommy Eden. I'm a partner with the law firm of Constangy, Brooks, Smith & Prophete. My office is located in East Alabama, and our firm has 30 offices across the country and about 180 attorneys, and I'm considered the drug czar within the firm.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Charlton Owensby is the MRO here at Wolfe Incorporated. Charlton, can you give us a little bit about your credentials and background history?
Yes, I'm a practicing physician and also an attorney. I've been practicing medicine for almost 35 years and an MRO for going on just about 30 years now. I have hundreds of clients, or I see hundreds of client companies and see tens of thousands of drug screens a year with my name on it as an evaluation stuff. And probably most of the people in this seminar, actually, but that's about it.
So for those of you who don't know who Wolfe Incorporated is, we are a third-party administrator of background screening, drug testing, lab services, program management. We do webinars just like this. We have other webinars coming up on Thursday, including ongoing criminal monitoring of current employees. We have an online eSmart program where we have over 200 programs and courses online for supervisors, managers, employees, et cetera, to take. We have blogs, newsletters, and a whole bunch of other very useful information on our website. You can visit our website at Wolfe, WOLFEINC.com. A little bit more about our services. We offer pre-employment, current employee, employment, education verifications, adverse action, lab services. We sell instant products. We have a nationwide network of drug collection facilities, program management, and a whole bunch of other HR solutions for everything that you need, human resources and safety manager-wise. So we'll get into this quick. Tommy, if you want to talk about the legal disclaimer, and I'm going to turn it over to you and let you guys start on the webinar. Thank you.
Awesome. Now, Alex, you are going to move the slides for me, so I'll just say next slide, and I'll tell you the topic. So welcome again on behalf of Dr. Owensby and I. We have done several webinars together, and I thoroughly enjoy his both camaraderie and knowledge in this area, and just a blessing to work with. So as with any legal disclaimer, now I will tell you Dr. Owensby also has a JD degree. So this is a legal disclaimer for him and me, and both a medical disclaimer in that this is only educational in nature and not legal or medical advice. So on today's agenda, we have four things we're going to cover. We're going to cover the threat, the challenges, the strategy, and the solution. So we want to leave you at the end of the day with a clear solution in what you're going to be doing going forward. So let's first talk about what CBD oil and what is it. So I'm going to let Alex, he's real advanced to the detail on that next slide, and I'm going to let Dr. Owensby get us started with what CBD oil is and maybe what it's not.
Yep. CBD oil is cannabidiol, and it's actually an oil pressed from the cannabis plant, sometimes called hemp, but the cannabis plant. Only a very small amount is present in the hemp, very, very small amount. It is typically marketed as a dissolved in sesame oil at about 20%, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. But that's typically how it's provided. When you see somebody talk about hemp oil or CBD oil, it's usually either plain hemp oil or CBD oil in sesame oil at about 20%. Some of these preparations have no CBD. Others have a little more than 20%, but 20% seems to be the amount that most people are getting when they purchase it. It's usually given in a small vial, a tincture vial, where you would add a little bit to your tongue, or you might put it on some food or something like that. The dosage typically, well, there is no set dosage because it's not medication over the counter, but the amount usually recommended is anywhere between 100 and 500 milligrams, which is just a drop or two, a few drops per day. And I guess nobody's seeing any slides yet, it looks like.
Alex, have you got slides up yet?
Yeah, there should be a shared screen there.
Well, we'll just keep going. Alex, you do what you can, and we'll talk them through.
Yep.
CBD oil, as a product of the hemp or cannabis plant, is considered a Schedule I substance. Basically, the DEA has banned it. However, CBD has been carved out in certain states. They will allow the sale of it for certain conditions, medical conditions. The DEA will only allow this if it contains less than 0.3% of THC as a byproduct or as a contaminant when they press the marijuana. The DEA says you can only press certain parts of the plant, basically the stalks, not the leaves or the buds or anything like that, because it does contain too much THC. So there are lots of rules about CBD oil. Many states don't allow the sale of it. In the states where it's allowed to be sold, no one can actually advertise it for any particular purpose. The FDA will not allow it to be sold as a medicine because it's not been tested as a medicine. It can be prescribed as a medicine by a physician for two conditions. Basically, some very rare childhood epilepsy conditions that don't respond to other treatments. And even then, it's not particularly effective, but there's no other effective medications. That's kind of the background on CBD oil. It has become an issue over the last few years as part of the idea to legitimize marijuana use. This began in California in 1996 when they decided that marijuana needed to have a better name. So they decided to start promoting, instead of negative uses for it, such as just recreational or psychoactive effects, they wanted to look for some type of medical benefits to make it more palatable to other folks. And that began in 1996 and continues to this day. I was just out in California this last weekend, and it continues. It's definitely widespread out there.
Let's talk about whether it's still legal or not, because let me jump into that, and I'll let Dr. Owensby back on that one. But is it still legal or not? Let me tell you what's created a huge amount of confusion across the country right now. You have, next slide, you've got 47 states that have decriminalized the use of CBD oil, and it is still on the Schedule I list for the Drug Enforcement Administration. So what's complicated it just in December of last year was the president signed the Farm Bill passed by both houses of Congress. And the Farm Bill was a huge boom to farmers in the idea that they can raise industrial hemp and then they can transport it across state lines, and it's not an illegal to transport anymore. And also it'll be involved in more banking and insurance transactions and things like that. So again, the DEA has not quite caught up with the Farm Bill in the sense that they've still got it on the Schedule I substances. So there is a huge diversity across the country of how U.S. attorneys' offices may look at this, or how state attorney generals are all looking at this. And it is still, there's still a lot of, let's say, legal haze in the air about CBD oil. So you got to be careful how you refer to that. Charlton, anything else to add on that?
I do. The one medication called Epidiolex, which is used for the childhood seizures, does not come from marijuana. It's synthetically made, so it does not contain any THC, and the DEA does not have a problem with that because it does not have any THC, and it is under good manufacturing processes, and it's very well regulated as medication.
And that's sold by a regular pharmacy.
Regular pharmacy, by prescription only, for a very specific reason for certain childhood seizures. Not all seizures, just a couple that don't respond to other medicines.
Now, the problem comes is some doctors can write that off-label. So just like all these other prescriptions that we have available that the doctor can write, it can be written off-label for some other condition. So you got to be real careful, because somebody, even though they're not a child, somehow they may end up with a legit prescription for CBD oil. Next slide. So, and then you'll see CBD oil state by state, and the green states are, of course, a lot of your recreational states you're seeing there, but you have medical marijuana states, and then you have CBD oil states. 47 states decriminalized it. So let's hit recent legal developments. We'll get down in the weeds a little bit more, and going over to the 2018 Farm Bill. So in the rambling 1,000 pages of the bill is a provision that, again, makes it legal for farmers to grow hemp. The final version of the bill places industrial hemp, which is defined as cannabis plant under a 0.03 THC, under the supervision of the Agriculture Department. Huge change. That is a huge change. And remove CBD oil from the purview of the Controlled Substances Act. But again, the DEA has not acted on that, but I would suspect probably in the next quarter, we're going to see some kind of announcement from them. The law explicitly preserves the Food and Drug Administration authority to regulate products concerning cannabis. So now we have 3 governmental agencies that are going to seek to regulate the CBD oil. You've got the Food and Drug Administration, and that's what Charlton was talking about, can't claim it has any medicinal purposes. You still got the DEA, and now you have the Department of Agriculture. So you're talking about a confused state of the law. One of the goals of the Farm Bill is to loosen restrictions to enable companies to sell the product made with hemp, soaps and cosmetics from hemp oil, as well as ropes and fabrics and fibers. And I will tell you, if you hit on the internet and put CBD oil, you will probably find at least 100 different products in 100 different categories that will fix everything you need. And again, the summary of the bill that will legalize industrial hemp and make hemp producers eligible for the federal crop insurance program. And as Charlton said, there is no standards really on exactly what the CBD oil is going to contain. There are no good housekeeping standards. There's no testing laboratories that are doing any kind of broad brush testing or ranking of these products. And pretty much they're based on whatever claim that they put in there. So you got to be very trusting for who the manufacturer is. Let's hit medical marijuana card holders and discuss how that kind of works together. So in 32 states, we have 32 states that have medical marijuana laws that allow the use of medical marijuana. And within those group of 32 states, we have 15 states that have cardholder protection laws. So and every one of the cardholder protection laws, every one of the medical marijuana laws around the country are different. There are no 2 states that you can put side by side. So to become a medical marijuana cardholder, a person must be suffering with a multitude or at least one of the impairments or disabling conditions that are listed in the statute. So when they hand you a card under these new conditions, it actually becomes a disability card, because they're only going to be able to show you that card if they have a qualifying disabling condition. And again, so as a management labor attorney, that is something you've got to be very cautious about, is how much information you receive. And sometimes it's better not to ask a lot of questions about what kind of disabling condition that allowed you to get this card. Now, I would use a doctor like the Dr. Owensby, somebody that both is like in the occupational physician field, to understand fitness for duty issues and things like that. But cardholder protection laws, when we're drafting policies across the country, we have particular provisions that we include in those protective states to be able to kind of pass muster in the medical marijuana cardholder states. Charlton, do you have anything you want to add on that, or anything that you've?
I do.
Please?
Just this last weekend in California, we talked about this at the American College of Legal Medicine. And California just updated their laws regarding this. It used to be $50 or $100 could get you a card, medical card, in 2 minutes. There really was no specific workup or evaluation done. The California decided they need to legitimize this a little bit, so that now they require a physical examination of somebody requesting a card, has to be documented, and has to be part of an ongoing continuing treatment program. And if that's done, then the physician cannot be sanctioned for recommending marijuana. They still can't prescribe it, but they can recommend it. So it's a little more difficult to get the card now. The main issue, people want the card because it's legal out there in California. You can use it for just about anything. The main reason they want it is you get a tax break now. If you buy cannabis under a doctor's recommendation, you don't have to pay tax on it, which is pretty significant out there. It's a pretty big tax for the state. One other thing is Hawaii, I think just this last year, will accept reciprocity with these marijuana cards, and which I hadn't heard before. And so
that's an interesting. Now, also Missouri does.
Yep.
So there are a couple of, and I want to say there's either one of the states, like a Maryland or New Jersey, or somebody else has a reciprocity up in the Northeast as well.
Yep. So
you got to be careful. Again, cardholder protection laws are much like the Americans with Disabilities Act. You got to be interactive. You got to have a conversation. You just can't say no anymore like you used to. But the drafting of a policy is what we do across the country on a regular basis. So let's skip over to drug testing and CBD oil, and then Charlton, if you'll talk about federally mandated testing, because you do a lot of that work, I know, for Wolfe.
Yes, I do. Under DOT federal programs, basically drivers, pipeline workers, railroad workers, anything like that, it's pretty simple. CBD is considered a Schedule I drug still, and so it is prohibited in any federal program. So it's a very easy call. If they claim CBD oil as a reason for a positive drug screen for THC, it's not a valid explanation. So it's pretty easy in the federal testing thing. Even if it was pure CBD, it would not cause a THC, more likely than not. But in a minute, I'll tell you a little more about that. Do you want me to talk about the controversy now, Tommy?
Yeah, go for it. Okay. Let's talk about it, because it is again, we're kind of jaded in this area of the law because we have seen so many people create the truth from the whole fabric, and I thoroughly believe that the first casualty of drug use is usually the truth. And again, I'm a little jaded in the field.
Yep.
So maybe you're not yet.
On the slide here, you see a CBD oil, 500 milligrams, 250 milligrams. And this is typically a daily dose or half a daily dose. If you take a gram or 1,000 milligrams of this during the day, typically that's about 20% CBD oil. So you're getting just 20% of 200 milligrams of pure CBD. And then of that, only 0.3% may be THC. So you're actually getting a very low amount of THC if there's any in there. So it's very unlikely that any of this stuff is going to cause a positive drug screen for THC. Now, if it's pure and synthesized CBD oil, it will not. Okay, on any topical applied to the skin products or any inhalation products, it will not cause a positive drug screen. There's a current controversy now, and it's just making me pull my hair out. It's been found that if you add CBD, pure CBD, into a acidic environment in a test tube outside the body, a certain amount of it will convert to THC. That's just a simple chemistry reaction, just an oxidation reaction that happens very easily in a test tube. It's not been shown to happen in adults, but that's a claim I've been hearing for the last 6 months to a year about folks. There is ongoing research about this up at Johns Hopkins, clinical research determining if ingested by mouth, CBD oil can cause a positive THC. I suspect it's going to turn out to be a tempest in a teapot, and it really doesn't. just because of the small amounts. And the in vivo, basically in the stomach environment, is very different than a test tube. So I expect it's going to be very different than that. Now, it's
But
possible.
let me ask you a question about that, because here's what I've heard. I've heard that from the laboratory standpoint, the chemical structure of CBD is slightly different from THC.
It is.
Okay, so it may screen positive at the lab. It may, in the initial screening process, it may screen positive, but it will never come out positive on a GCMS.
Well, that's the issue right here. Is CBD oil is not THC, and it really won't screen positive as a cross react with the screens. There, of course, may be some THC in CBD oil up to 0.3%. Which is a very, very small amount, by the way. But the controversy is you may take pure CBD oil and it may be converted into THC in the stomach. That's the problem. And then you may absorb it and then it gets in your urine, and that's how it's tested. So that's the issue. CBD oil will not cause a positive THC in urine. But
Okay.
so that's
just know that we're having, and I know Charlton's having this too. My clients are having people that are claiming I took CBD oil and that's the reason I tested positive for THC.
Right.
They're claiming that because they can research the internet just like we can,
Yep.
and they can find these people that are making these claims, and they can print these off and say, "Hey, here's why I tested positive. It's not because I smoked marijuana, but I took this stuff that helps me go to sleep at night."
And there are two other things for this. This does not happen if you vape it or smoke the CBD oil, or if you rub it topically, like on a knee or whatever else people like to do with that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's only if you take it by mouth. Is it possible? And I do mean it's probably not possible, but that's what this research is about right now. On the other side of it is, since manufacturers of CBD oil do not want the DEA running on their back or on their back, they have done some research and basically are saying that our product contains no THC. And that's kind of how they try to prepare themselves for a DEA audit. And they have done research. The problem is it's not particularly prestigious. It's like in the Journal of Cannabis Research and stuff. So I'm not really sure it's that good.
So if you go to the next slide, let's talk a little bit about what about non-regulated workplace drug testing in CBD oil? Because Carlton talked about regulated, and the problem is this is a new issue. So within the last year, pretty much. So no employers typically are dealing with it in the policy. So over a dozen states have authorized various forms of CBD oil. The latest guidance came from the American Medical Review Officers. Are you a member of AAMRO, Charlton?
Yes, that's
okay.
That's where I gave it to you.
Okay, and so the medical review training and the certification. So he got a lot of the information he's talking about from his industry group on this issue. And then their guidance. So look at the bottom of the page. Is their guidance that they issued was in a private employer drug testing environment, an MRO with a positive THC and a donor's claim of CBD oil, the MRO should consult with the employer. CBD oil is still a Schedule I compound, but state law and the employer should be considered in the absence of any employer policy or guidance, the as-is approach outlined above. So the as-is approach that the association basically said was just to provide a copy of the laboratory result and just pass through, and really don't offer an opinion of whether it's a positive or negative, but here is the laboratory report. Now, what do you think about that?
I think it's probably a good approach because this is not a medical question for the medical review officer. This is basically a policy issue by the states, and it's administrative. You know, does this person have a condition that might allow them to use CBD oil? Yeah, it's possible, but generally folks are going to be taking this, just getting it from GNC or wherever else they can get it, and is taking it without any medical supervision or medical ideas about that, because it's okay to take it now, or at least to possess it legally. This specific paragraph came about because of the issue with conversion of CBD oil to THC in the stomach. That's what this paragraph is about. If you rub it on your body, if you smoke it or vape it, it's not going to cause a positive THC. There is a remote, and I do mean remote possibility, that if you drink by mouth a large amount of pure CBD, you may convert some of that into THC, which may be absorbed and end up in a urine. That's what this paragraph is about. This research that's being done up at Johns Hopkins right now should answer that question in the next few months. And because there's nothing to say whether that won't do it, that's why this paragraph is here.
So hit the next slide, and that's a little bit about what is the as-is approach. So I'll just kind of read through this and let you give some comments. So here was the as-is approach as off of the Quest diagnostic website. So will I pass a drug test? Maybe. CBD itself would not report positive for marijuana or marijuana metabolite if the CBD oil product contains THC at a significant high concentration. It's possible that the use of these products could cause a positive urine drug test for marijuana metabolites. In some states, CBD could be maybe up to 5% THC. The next bullet, drug testing, drug set cutoffs for the positive at 50 nanograms per milliliter and above. When the test is positive, it gets screened again with GCMS or LCMS, in which have cutoffs of 15, which is specific for the THC metabolite. Next bullet. In order for CBD or cannabinoid-rich hemp products to test positive for drug test, an individual would have to usually have large amounts, 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams of the product. And due to the fact that it remains an unregulated drug, some CBD oil manufacturers have as much as 1/10 of the THC concentration as marijuana. Consuming high quantities of CBD oil will leave enough THC in your system to linger a positive test result and cause impairment. And then employers need to ensure that their policies address the issue and reflect their position on it. So if I've got, let me ask a question. So if I've got somebody that is using a small amount of CBD oil and ingesting it somehow, and doing that on a regular daily basis, or maybe doing it 3 times a day, while there may be a minuscule amount in each one of the dosages they're taking, one of the things that you and I know is that THC molecules stay in the fatty parts of the body for a long period of time on somebody. So how is that gonna match up?
Well, they do tend to accumulate, bioaccumulate it's called, but at small amounts it's probably negligible. At the same time it's coming into the fat cells, it's also going out. So it's basically, if you use a lot of it, what happens is over time it will accumulate in the fat cells. If you're not using very much, not much is going to get in the fat cells, so it's probably not going to be a big issue. The amount of CBD that people take is usually 100 to 500 milligrams or so of the product, and they usually get about 20 to 100 milligrams of CBD, which is equivalent to about 0.6 to 3 milligrams of THC legally. By contrast, a joint contains about 60 to 100 milligrams of THC. So it's a very small amount that might be legal. Now, he talks about CBD oil that may contain up to 5% THC. Those are not legal products sold in this country. So, yeah, you can do that, but those aren't legal. Those are very likely to cause a positive drug screen.
You and I know it is the Wild West out there.
Yep.
Right now. But like nothing I've seen in the past, not even the old marijuana days. It's huge. All right, let's hit the last couple of slides. Let's do this one about, so how does an employer form a compliant legal strategy when dealing with medical marijuana anti-discrimination claims, CBD oil, prescription opiates, and impairing substances in the workplace, while at the same time reducing the risk of administrative claims or litigation? So let's hit the last slide, and I'll kind of hit the points on that. So here's the risk reduction strategy: is update your job descriptions to include safety sensitive positions and the ability to work in a constant state of alertness and safe manner as an essential job function. So when we're talking about a holistic approach concerning marijuana anti-discrimination states, opioid pre-duty disclosure for all the opioid products that are out there now, And in this new CBD oil, classifying people in safety-sensitive positions is highly recommended because safety will trump marijuana. 2, update your drug-free workplace policy to bring into compliance with the state laws and to include a pre-duty impairing effects disclosure safety policy for safety-sensitive employees and notice of how medical marijuana card holders may make a reasonable accommodation request. So there's 4 major cases of litigation across the country, mostly up in the Northeast region in Massachusetts and in Connecticut and Delaware and Rhode Island. And so all of those cases happened because there was no attempt to even have a discussion, much less an accommodation. So that's where they all pretty much got off the rails really early in those. Number 3, treat all impairing effect prescription medications and substances. I include CBD and marijuana as substances equally as a safety risk to reduce the risk of medical marijuana anti-discrimination claims. And 4, notify employees in the policy. Now, this is the heart of the recommendation for this part of the webinar. Notify employees in the policy that the claimed use of CBD oil shall not be considered a medical excuse for a positive marijuana test. All right, and then 5, train hiring personnel and supervisors to engage in the interactive discussion in the process when dealing with card holders in the 15 medical marijuana states, and I would say really with any CBD oil, that the answer should not be no. The answer should be, okay, well, let's talk about how that interfaces with our safety policy here at the company. And then 6, obtain a written fitness for duty opinion from an occupational / MRO, I would say also medical examiner, physician before you take adverse employment action against a medical marijuana card holder in one of the 15 states. And I would say also with regards to CBD oil, I mean, I would be cautious. There's going to be a big movement to reasonably accommodate those under some of the state discrimination ADA laws. So you just got to be, in this day and time, it's all about risk reduction. All right, Carlton, what do you,
in one sense, it's you're not going to see claims of CBD oil unless they have a positive THC drug screen. Okay, so
correct.
That's the problem. So you don't test for CBD oil, nobody does. So there is no positive test for CBD. It's all going to be THC. And so that's the issue right here. And how do you distinguish the two? And how do you not discriminate? Were you going to talk about the Walmart decision out in Arizona, Tommy, or do you know about that?
I just did a blog post on it.
Okay.
And do you want to talk about it? I'll chime in.
Well, I'll give you the brief, or not the brief, but a brief synopsis of it. Walmart had an employee, and they basically designated all of their employees as safety sensitive, and they tested all their employees. And one employee had a positive drug screen for THC and had a marijuana card in Arizona. Arizona has a specific law that basically provides legal protections for folks who have a marijuana card. And eventually what happened was the company was okay to use their policy, but they found that the company likely discriminated against based on this policy. Basically gives creates a new protected class set of marijuana users in Arizona, which is a tough thing. Hopefully this will be appealed and overturned, but that's a scary thing for folks trying to do.
So Arizona is a protective state. So Arizona falls in the list of 15 states that grant protection for cardholder usage. In the state of Arizona, it says that you can be fired or you can be disciplined for impairment in the workplace. So in that particular case, they didn't have a medical doctor. They basically had the HR person testifying that we looked at the laboratory report and we believe at the nanogram level for THC they tested that they were impaired. So, and the judge, basically, his federal judge out in Arizona, basically said that's a bunch of hooey. And he actually granted summary judgment to the cardholder without even being asked to. In the law, it's called sui sponte. So the judge decided to grant them summary judgment with no motion for summary judgment filed on behalf of the cardholder. So it's a nasty result. It's not the kind of result that a management labor attorney wants to ever explain to his client. How did he get there? So, so policy is where I kind of walk away from this. If you don't have the right policy language, you are at legal risk in these type of cases. I think that's the last slide we had. And now we're welcome. Anybody that wants to throw any questions at us, we are totally good to try to answer those. We've got about 15 or 20 minutes. We can try to do that, and I guarantee you we'll have fun doing it.
Awesome. Well, we do have a couple questions that came through. The first one comes from Karen. How about the new beers that have hemp in them? Will this show up in urine since some people can ingest excessive amounts of alcohol?
Charlton, that's you.
Basically, no. The short answer is no. Hemp products are typically cannot contain any THC, and so of any significance. So it's basically negative. The answer is basically no. The short answer.
Our next question comes from Leonard. I've heard of people putting CBD oil in their eyes as eye drops. Is this possible?
I assume it's possible. There are some strange people out there. You know, they're giving it to their pets. They're doing everything with it. And for something that has basically no proven effect anywhere, and only a possible effect with some certain childhood seizures, that's a rather strange use of an oil. But we've seen it before with things like sweet oil or red oil around here. It's just a very strange thing. I have no idea there's any use in an eye.
Charles, one of the advice I give to clients is if somebody comes to you and says, is it okay if I use CBD oil? Your answer needs to be, you are responsible for whatever you put in your body. If you want to vacation in Colorado and you want to smoke dope, you know our rules here. And if you come back and you test positive, it's a positive test. I am not going to accept the excuse that you bought it in Colorado and it was legal to go there. Whatever you put in your body is your responsibility. And if you're going to do CBD oil, you better make sure that it's not going to test positive for marijuana, because it's going to be a positive marijuana test. So if they need to do something like go to a site and have their own urine collected and have it tested and see. But that would be my advice for employers.
And even if they are putting in their eyes, there's no idea what actually is in that CBD oil. Usually, like I said, it's sesame oil plus some CBD oil, but you have no idea what's really in there because there's no standardization. I wouldn't put it in my eyes.
Yeah. So it's, again, tell them what you do, your body is your responsibility. But if your urine comes out, if your oil fluid comes out, if your hair comes out and it's positive, it's positive.
Yep.
That's a great explanation, Doris. We hope that answered your question too. Doris's question was, how does this CBD oil, hemp oil use claim of usage affect CDL drivers since DOT does not allow it? Well, you basically just answered her question there.
Yep.
We had another question from Claudia, which was answered previously here just a moment ago. We're a North Carolina-based employer. If a South Carolina employee is prescribed CBD, they tested positive, would the MRO discuss with the employee to determine if cleared, or will it still report out as a positive? Well, it's still gonna, you just answered that before.
Well, obviously if they say they're prescribed CBD, that assumes a physician relationship and actually prescription. But I also know that the only thing that's allowed for is some very pediatric seizure disorders, and I mean 5 years old up to about early teens. So I have a feeling they're not driving a truck if it's legitimately prescribed. Now it can be prescribed off-label, obviously, but CBD again, if it is actually true CBD, like a Pidiolex, the medication prescribed, will not cause a positive THC because it doesn't have any THC in it. It's pure CBD.
Yeah, and that's actually synthetic as well. Yeah.
Correct, synthetic. So it's not going to do that. With the one caveat that it's possible, and I do mean remotely possible, that the CBD may be converted, a small amount may be converted to THC in the stomach and absorbed. But like I said, I don't believe that's going to be an issue. And like I said, ongoing research is here. But that's the whole reason behind that little weird statement there. They just don't have the evidence to say yay or nay yet. But I suspect it's going to be negative.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions today for our panelists? You can enter those in the Q&A section, or you can enter them on the chat. Either way, I have both of them pulled up. If anybody else has anything they want to ask quick, we do have approximately 13, 14 minutes left.
Let me ask Charlton a question on this. You and I have talked about before some of the studies, and I think I actually sent you one that came from a friend of mine, a medical study that showed there was some long-term complications involving DNA or genes or something like that involving long-term use of marijuana, especially at a young age. Do you want to speak on that just for a minute about maybe some of the long-term health effects that may come out of CBD oil use or marijuana use or just any THC product?
I do. First of all, let me say hi to Claudia Tietenbaum. I just thought she was on here. I've known her for 30 years. I do. Marijuana is just not a harmless plant, and not to evoke comparisons to reefer madness, but it does cause cognitive impairment in adults and probably much more so to children and adolescents. You've seen reports over the last couple of years about how it really does affect the developing brain. And the brain is developing up to about age 25 or 26, sometimes 46 in some people, but 25 or 26 in most adults. So it's actually quite vulnerable. It's even more vulnerable the first trimester. There are just a few cells in the fetus or the embryo at that time, and they are rapidly differentiating into all the kinds of tissues in the body. And any kind of disturbance then can cause a real problem. CBD and marijuana have been shown to cause some rather nasty problems with embryos. One is called gastroschisis, which happens as an embryo is developing. The body doesn't close around the gut, the intestines, and so intestine stuff will basically develop outside the body, which is kind of gross to think about. Also, anencephaly or other brain disorders are quite common in folks who've been exposed to marijuana and CBD in utero. And so it's not just a benign substance. Some people think that exposure to marijuana may cause an increased incidence of autism, and they equate the increased use of marijuana over the last 30 or 40 years with the increased rate of autism. I don't know if there's a whole lot of information about that yet, but it's an interesting association there.
It sounds like what we're seeing is a lot of, I have some personal experience. My brother adopted children from Russia, and one of the things that came over with them was fetal alcohol syndrome, all three of them. And I'm thinking what we're going to see in another 3 or 4 years, or maybe somewhere in that period of time, we're going to see fetal THC syndrome or something like that.
Well, you very well may. I'm not so sure it'll be quite that demarcation, but you very well might. A couple of joints smoked is equivalent to smoking a pack of cigarettes a day in terms of lung damage. That's been studied and documented in several studies. And that doesn't even talk about the fungi and all the other contaminants.
The pesticides and everything else in there. Yes, yeah. Well, just know that we practice in this area all the time, and we think they're both health and safety effects or bad effects from the use of these products over a long period of time, and it is not healthy for your workforce. You're going to have increased safety incidents. I know we didn't talk about this on this presentation, but we did the last presentation. You can get access from Wolfe. We had a long talk about the number of fatalities in the workplace and how there has been a steady increase since 2011 to 2017 of people dying in the workplace from slips and trips and falls, and also drug overdoses in the workplace, pretty much opiate drug overdoses in the workplace. And both of those have been on steep inclines from 2011 to 2017. So, I mean, there are huge safety and health effects in both of those that people are dying in your workforce.
It really does cause a similar impairment to alcohol, probably even worse because it lasts longer. And the effect may last several days, even weeks after you've used it. And this is, some studies have shown that. But from 30 years of doing these interviews with donors as a medical review officer, my impression is it just makes these folks stupid. More often than not, they come across as generally as demotivated and dense.
Let's hit a couple of questions. I see a couple of questions come up. Let me hit the very last one. What's the legal liability in declaring all positions in a staffing agency safety sensitive states that this has been attempted? And has there been litigation in which the claimant has argued that some positions are less safety sensitive or more safety sensitive than others? A dowel setter and a furniture are allowed to partake in CBD where a machine operator is not. I will tell you that I have had tremendous luck across the country when the employer has taken the time to do an internal memo, have a definition of what safety sensitive is, and then classify certain positions as safety sensitive. If you classify everyone as safety sensitive, and especially people that don't go on the manufacturing floor, that aren't around moving equipment or forklifts and things like that, then it loses some of its authenticity and defendability. If you have people that everybody in the factory is going to go on the manufacturing floor either every day or at least occasionally, you're totally going to be easy. Courts will not look behind your classification of safety sensitive if it's just so, unless it's just so ludicrous or unless you've used it for people like the front desk receptionist. As long as you differentiate, you're going to have an extremely defensible position. But again, not everybody can be safety sensitive. Typically, I've done that for some clients when we help them define and help them job categories. But again, don't do it to everyone or you lose the defensibility of the classification.
Okay. We have another question that came in from Lori. Can you speak more about the off-label prescription of CBD oil? If prescribed off-label, does that clear a positive drug screen?
Charlton, that's you.
Repeat that one more time.
Can you speak more about the off-label prescription of CBD oil? If prescribed off-label, does that clear a positive drug screen?
Well, CBD oil, remember, contains no THC of significance. And if it's smoked or rubbed on an ankle or a knee, it's not going to cause a positive drug screen for THC. It is possible, though I think very unlikely, that a small amount of pure CBD may be converted to THC in the stomach, in the acidic environment stomach, but I suspect it's not going to turn out to be an issue. Because of that, the recommendation now is just to report it out as it comes in. If it's positive for THC, just report it as is, and that's the problem right now, and that's kind of the reason for this seminar here. I think it's very unlikely that CBD oil, whether prescribed or off-label or over-the-counter, will cause a positive THC result, but it is possible, and because of that, the recommendation is just report it out as is, and to fall back on the company's policy to determine what to do with this result. The other alternative is for non-safety sensitive positions, you may just not want to test for marijuana, THC. That'll take that problem right off the table.
The CBD.
Okay, yeah, and again, put in your policy that a positive marijuana, that CBD oil claimed use shall not be acceptable as a legitimate excuse for marijuana. That'll take it off the table completely.
Yep.
All right, our next question comes from Dina. Does CBD oil react with any prescription medications or supplements?
I'm not aware of it. I'm not aware of any specific reactions that it does.
Okay.
I think it has very little pharmacologic effect anyway. So I think it really is not the cure-all that everybody says it is. It's probably about like taking some sesame oil. You know, does that interact with anything? Probably not.
Okay, our next question is, one of their client companies has a very long employee who has been there for 22 years, but has a medical condition in which his doctor is prescribing medical marijuana.
If you would like more information on Wolfe services, give us a call at 1-800-230-2991 or visit our website at www.wolfeinc.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on LinkedIn, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We put out new videos all the time. Thank you for watching this video from Wolfe, your trusted source for employer solutions.